All right, welcome into another special edition of Pirate Radio Live here. Got a special guest in Studio C with me today. He's the one and only Sam Jones from Sam Jones Barbecue, fourth generation barbecue man. He's also an author. I don't know if you know that, but he wrote this great book. We had him on not too long ago and talked about that. But he is also like a TV star, according to Bravo TV this week. You were on Top Chef. Sam, saw the news, wanted to have you on and catch up and see what's been going on. Congratulations with all the stuff that's been happening.
Well, thank you, my friend. It was fun. Uh, One of those judges I had interacted with some years ago when I was constantly traveling, and but the idea behind this was they were trying to like visit North Carolina, and that I guess every little city now is what I used to call the Chamber of Commerce is now a visit. That particular area, and they were trying to attract them to Charlotte, and so I had went out, I should say, to Charlotte back. Had to be like the spring of last year or something like that. And a lot of the people from the show, as far as producers and those type, the decision makers, so to speak, uh, came, and there was a handful of us that let them sample the cuisine of our fair state, and did a little handshaking and neck hugging and that kind of thing. Was more that was kind of the directive I've got. Was like, hey, your food's good, but turn on your personality a little bit. Shake some hands.
Yeah.
And so fortunately, they had come to decided they were going to use Charlotte as their home plate for this particular season. And it was pretty neat. When I got there, they had leased a vacant warehouse. And so everything on that show that you would typically see is the backdrop of, all those walk-in coolers and grocery store situation, on one side. That set was all built in this warehouse. And so, I mean, it was amazing to see the amount of, money that got invested in that particular region just to shoot that show.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a place there in Charlotte that was their home base that they would come and go from, as far as when I know Greenville, South Carolina was when I say a stop, it was kind of it was when it was called the Carolinas, so it wasn't just North Carolina, but so Charlotte was the hub, so to speak, is from what Top Chef worked out of, and that was where their main set was.
Yeah, so people know you. Your family started, Skylight Inn, which has been around for many moons. You guys
1947.
since 1947. You
Yeah.
guys have just celebrated 10 years of Sam Jones Barbecue
Yeah.
in Winterville. Of course, you got one in Raleigh as well. And you've kind of taken this. You've gone beyond. I mean, you're more of an entrepreneur now. With the restaurants are great, but like this selling the whole hog barbecue story seems to be kind of like what I've kind of watched and follow you do over the years. I know you've been to a lot of cooking competitions and stuff, but I know this was special to be featured on a television show called Top Chef on Bravo.
Yeah, well, going back a long time, I grew up in Skylight, and I think in any family business and any family in general, for a undetermined amount of time, you're gonna pretty much regurgitate what your family says and does, and I was a victim of that. And after my grandfather died, I see you hold my book there, but I included it in there after my grandfather died. Man, Skylight was almost a name. If I put in there, if the property hadn't been paid for, that was a name that would have been spoken of in historical reference. We had gotten that bad of shape financially, and it wasn't because anything we did. We were doing the same thing we had always did, or done, I should say. But it went from he hadn't been in the business in several years, but when it was in all the newspapers that barbecue, whatever they put the title in front of his name, dead at 77. Man, it was like you flipped a light switch. And we went for about 3 years there where it was hand and mouth. And nobody would know that looking from the street. But if, like I said, if that property hadn't been paid for, we'd have been in really, really bad shape. And in 2010, well, excuse me, I'll back up. In '08, I believe it was, the Southern Foodways Alliance shot a film on us called "Leave It to Cleaver," or it was "Leave It to Cleaver" or "Capital Q." And then fast forward 2010, I get a call from uh, John T. Edge, who was director at the time. They were doing this thing with Charleston Wine and Food. Southern Foodways Alliance was always involved with Charleston Wine and Food, but they wanted to show that film and me come down and cook. And nobody in my family, of everything they had done, nobody had cooked away from that store. And so I came from a family that, their ceiling was your ceiling.
Right.
That, they did not empower you to do more than they did. And so, man, I was scared to death. I didn't, as stupid as that sounds.
You're getting outside your comfort zone.
Exactly right. And I went down and did it. And it was so funny because I remember when they showed the film and we carried the hog in on this big tray, and there was 150, 175 people there that had bought tickets, stood to their feet and applauded, and I was like, "Is there somebody coming in behind me here?"
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, man, we've done this for a long time in North Carolina to no applause.
Right. Well, I think oftentimes we get so set in our ways and take things for granted that other people don't experience all the time. And I kind of feel like you've kind of done that with Whole Hog Barbecue, of trying to tell the story of doing from that cooking competition to others.
But it wasn't. So I've only done like 2 competitions, so to speak. I've done oodles of events.
Right. Yeah.
Where I was either the showcase or one of the people that were a showcase, so to speak. But I used that particular event because that one weekend put me in front of, when I say the right people, so many super smart and kind people that lifelong friends now. But then that led to this little group that we traveled together for a while of chefs and writers and barbecue people, called the Fatback Collective is what they called us. And so, you find yourself in the company of these super smart people, not only in food, but restaurateurs. And I was able to take what I was learning and bring it home and I didn't change the principles of what we did, as far as whole hog wood fired, but I was able to change our processes that made our food better, and start learning that, it's not just a roadside barbecue stand, run it like a restaurant and do all the things we can do to make our food better. And, it's like the Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. A guy told me one time, he said, if you cook the best food you can cook and be kind to people, you got it licked.
Pretty good formula right there.
And it really turned that business around. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I was establishing a brand within a brand. And, because when we got ready, fast forward, we get ready to do Sam Jones. And I didn't want to call it Sam Jones at all, because my grandfather was that guy, bless his heart, that he was the star of the show.
Right.
Without him, this thing's going to fold up like an umbrella. And it almost did. And so, what kind of legacy is that? That, yeah, you did great while you were here, and then when you left, it collapsed. And so, but we're sitting in a communications company's office in Birmingham, and they're giving us the pitch, conceptual ideas. And every pitch, it had different things too. I mean, right on down to matchbooks. These people had their stuff together, and I had been introduced to them from one of those colleagues that I was telling you about. And but every one of them was Sam Jones, and I was like, I don't want to use that. And they were like, yeah, we figured that.
Well, I think it's worked out okay.
Well, but what they said was, because one of the things I had said was, I didn't want whatever this new place was going to be, I didn't want it to pirate from Skylight, or, throw shade on it or steal from it, that I wanted it to be an extension of. And they said, well, whether you realize it or not, you've created a brand within a brand. Said if you decided tomorrow you wanted to get out of the barbecue business, it would take a decade for Skylight to completely separate itself and sever the tie from this Sam Jones person. And I'd never looked at it that way. And so, they said that is the tie that will bind the two together is simply your name. And I was like, okay, well, that's a little easier pill to swallow. And so that was why we ended up, calling it what we called it. It wasn't, hey, look at me type of deal because that's not my personality.
Yeah, well, it's been a huge hit, and both restaurants here locally are enjoyed by many people locally, but also I know a lot of people that drive in to experience. Let's talk about the TV show, the Bravo TV experience. What was that like? How did you get asked to be a part of this? What was it? Was it the Fatback Collective that got you
No,
this?
so like I said, the I'm on, for lack of better terms, to visit Charlotte, visit North Carolina. They were, wooing, so to speak, trying to get them to let that be their home base, and that's the best of my understanding. And so, like I said, I went up, done a little event where it was a meet and greet. It was only maybe 40, 50 people, and a guy I did know, Robert Moss, who writes for a host of different publications, but he's the one that does the Southern Living's Top 50 every year. I've known him for years and years now. He was there to kind of articulate who each of us was. I think there were it was 5 or 6 barbecue places, that were there to let them sample, the cuisine of the state, and there he was to kind of give a background of who was who and give some historical data, and so I came away from that, just all right. I did my part, not knowing what would come out of it, and then sometime later they had reached out and was like, hey, it's gonna be they're gonna do it here. It'll be home base, and then that parlayed into, will you be a guest judge? And I was like, yeah, I'd be happy to, because you know, any exposure is good exposure as long as you're not wearing a jumpsuit. And
Yeah. Well, you definitely didn't do that. You were a judge on the show.
yeah,
What was your favorite part of that experience of being a part of a Top Chef? I mean, season 23. Obviously, they've had some success with the show. What, just from a show business television side of it, what was the experience like being on the show?
oh,
And
well, they were very super accommodating. I mean, even from the time you and I were chatting before this, when it was getting right up to the time, I found myself in the hospital last year,
hmm
and I was still communicating with them, and I was going, "Hey, let me just go and throw a flag out there that I don't know exactly what my deal is going to be here." I said I've already been in the hospital longer than I had planned, and I said anybody knows me knows that if I tell you I'm gonna do something, I try to do it. Especially something of that magnitude. And so when I filmed it, I had literally been out of the hospital a week.
wow.
That's why when I did get to see, I just watched it last night, and I was like, man, because I remember how bad I felt, and I said, God, it looks like I was in there picking out a casket when I was standing there.
Maybe been on a different show
Yeah,
there.
exactly. And but it was fun. They were super accommodating, and the young lady that kind of, I'm gonna say, handled me, so to speak, the one I had the most communication with, was one of the production staff people, and like I said, it was very easy, And there again, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but once you've done some things like that on TV, you kind of know to run a show,
Right.
or pretty much how it's gonna go. It's just a matter of somebody putting you in your spot and telling you exactly what's expected of you. There wasn't a script or anything such as that. And they had told me, so, we kind of figured out that, the gamut here. You're going to do best just firing it from the hip. And so we, our part was we did get, the chefs got a chance to sample our food. And so that was one thing different than some of the other, because there was probably 30 that were probably figured guest judges, different barbecue joints from around the state. And and some from South Carolina as well. And so, but they did get to sample our food, being as we were the furthest away, which was pretty neat. And so they got to eat ours as well as we wasn't too far from Lexington,
Sure.
so they were able to go to Lexington number one, which you know historically, if there's some kind of comparison between East and West, barbecue in Eastern North Carolina and Western North Carolina barbecue, historically they've used Skylight and Lexington barbecue, which is the Monk family. That's typically the two that get picked in media for whatever reason, and so they were able to eat food from both of those places.
Now that you've seen the finished product, what they put out on Bravo TV, and people can go back and watch it, I believe, on the Peacock app, and it's available. I'm sure reruns will happen as well. How was the actual television show? Did it turn out as good or better than you thought, or did you?
Yeah, well, the
How
thing
much
is,
did they leave? They didn't cut you too bad on the editing floor, did
well,
they?
that's the thing is you don't never know, how much time you're gonna actually get. All the TV I've done over the years, there's been some where we taped for 2 days, 3 days to get, you know, 24 minutes.
Right.
As I say, there's tons of content, and you never know what's going to end up on the finished product. It's not like you're part of that editing process. And so, but most of my part there again, I wasn't no star of the show by any means, but I was there when when the show comes on, and the contestants are standing in that main set, and the young lady that's typically the host of the show, she's one of the judges as well, but that she's the one that articulates everything as far as what they can expect most of the time right out of the gate. Um, she was the one that introduced me, and so right into within the first few minutes of the show, my unpretty self comes bebopping in there with a plate of food. And so I was in there when they learned of what they were going to be cooking, what was going to be expected of them, and all that kind of stuff. And then from that, the contestants leave, and that's when they go to visit Lexington. And then we actually had two taping locations. You had that main place I was telling you about, and then I cannot for the life of me remember the name of this place. It's called something Pond, but it's basically a huge event space. And it's not a pond. We would refer to it as a lake. It's got little cottages around it and a
Okay.
main event space. It looks like a place that, you know, people with a pile of money would use for wedding venues and things such as that. And so that was where they actually did the hog cooking. And I did something that had kind of slipped my mind because it's been so long ago. But the gentleman at BQ Grills that designed or that built the grills that I designed years ago, that he and I work together on those now. But I was able to facilitate his grills being on that set, and so there's people, some of the contestants were from the West Coast, and obviously that's a national show that has a huge following, and so that was another little tidbit that I was able to contribute to help work out that we had those whole hog cookers that was designed years ago that are made right in Elm City, North Carolina. That got a little piece of the spotlight as well.
Yeah, very cool stuff. Connecting Eastern North Carolina on a national platform is
Yeah.
what Sam Jones did. The show aired this week. You, as I said, go to Bravo TV, search it, or Top Chef Season 23. Whole Hog is what they featured. Any other future projects coming up for Sam Jones?
We're doing the Carolina Barbecue Festival this weekend, which there again, that's a charity event. I've tried to dial back some of that. COVID helped me get off of the hamster wheel,
Where you
from traveling.
slowed you down because you were
Yeah, I
you
was
were a traveling man early.
120 plus days a year.
Yeah.
And all that just ground to a halt just all of a sudden. And when I say a hamster wheel, it's hard to get off of when it's spinning.
Right.
when it stops, you're like, oh, I can take a breath, and
Mm.
then it helped me reevaluate. Like, okay, I don't quite have to do all this stuff I've been doing anymore. There you go. Not from an arrogant standpoint, but years ago I pulled at every straw. To when I was trying to build something, and not that I've made hit the peak of the mountain or anything, but some of those events are like snake charmers. It's like, hey, basically they act like they're doing you a favor when in actuality now your brand equity is helping the event. But it's like, hey, look at this hand while I pinch you on the back of the neck with this
Right.
one. And so now, it's either got to be a cause that I believe in or something that's going to be good for the business. Uh, as I told the PR people when everything started opening back up, I said, I either need an emotional return or a financial return. And one of the young ladies on the phone call said, well, Sam, what exactly do you mean by that? And I said, meaning if it's a cause I believe in, and I named a few. I said, like Firebox down, my friends at Southern Soul Barbecue in St. Simon's. I said, I'm going to do their event every year. Southern Smoke out in Texas. Chris Shepard does a big event. Both of those, the monies help industry people that get sick, get in car wrecks, things such as that, and keeps them on their feet until they can get back to work. I said things like that. If it costs me money, I'll go help. I said these other things, whereas you got to argue for hotel rooms and everything's a uphill climb. I'm good. I said I'm break even sitting at home.
Yeah, well, you've learned a lot on your journey, and congratulations on all your success. And I know everybody will be excited to watch you on that Bravo TV
You know,
episode.
I appreciate that. I look at these things as yes, it's good for us. It's good for our brand. But anytime that and I've said this before, but anytime we're mentioning a publication or you're on a show such as this of that magnitude, yeah, it's good for us, but it's good for our community. It's good for our region. It's good for the state. And so I used to liken myself, there again, not making myself out to be a big deal, but almost as an ambassador of the area in my particular field because I'm very proud of where I'm from. And, you know, I don't have that itis situation. I look at everything as a collective. And so when you want, if you hit the home run, you want to look in the dugout and see everybody cheering for you. And that's the way I approach and look at these things when they present themselves. That we get an opportunity, yeah, it may showcase us, but that is good for everybody because it brings a spotlight to our community, to our area, to our region of the country. Because bless the heart, Eastern North Carolina is like the armpit of America.
Well,
Just because of the sparsely populated, we're sparsely populated.
yeah, well, you took the words right out of my mouth. You are a great ambassador, obviously for your own business, but is also for Eastern North Carolina. And I think that's what makes everybody proud. I mean, there are a lot of people in the dugout cheering for you when they see you on the Bravo TV or seeing you do these events or write this book. But thank you for spending some time with us today. And I know maybe sounds like you're more local. Maybe people can catch you at Sam Jones or Skylight occasionally if they
I
get
am
lucky one day.
home a lot more than I used to be. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for sharing some time with us and keep in touch as you got future projects and other things you're going on. And thank you for your partnership with Pirate Radio.
Oh yeah, man. I always enjoy coming by and hanging out with you fellas.
Sam Jones from Sam Jones Barbecue and Skylight Inn joining us today. Be sure to go to Bravo TV season 23 at Top Shelf and check out that whole hog barbecue episode. You'll be glad you did.